Welcome to the Word, Sound, and Power Hour. How do you move from a broken heart, divorce, molestation, rape, or other trauma to true love? Hear the riveting story of how Mark and Avion found true healing in Christ, met each other, and began falling in love.
Word, sound, and power. That's what I mean every hour.
Welcome to another episode of the Word, Sound, and Power Hour. I am so excited because right in front of me are three of my favorite people in the whole entire world. I have my beautiful wife, Avion Blackman, and our daughter, Ziza Forevermore. Beautiful middle name. And your afro is just incredible. Gravity defying today, Ziza. And then we have our new adopted daughter, if you will, Kawehena. I don't know your whole name. What is, say your whole name again. I need to memorize it.
Kawehena Kayao Okala'akwalu Keli'i Ho'omanavanui Williams.
Mohr.
More.
We're going to add that to it too. No, I'm kidding. All right. So we just had an episode recently where I was interviewing Avion and going into some tough times that she faced, talking about when they moved to the jungle, talking about as a 4-year-old being molested, as a teenager, a very young teenager being molested by a family member, and how God got her through that by giving her grace to that person, giving her forgiveness to that person, and ultimately bringing her healing. And then that was the same period where she had said, Jesus, I'm all in. She didn't just clean up her house, but she filled it up. She filled up her heart with God, and God gave her strength. Would you say, baby?
Yeah.
Anything you'd like to add to that?
No, you're doing good.
Okay. And around that same time, there were some other things going on in your life that we haven't delved into yet. And one of them, it can probably be summed up by looking at this family photo. Somewhere in this family photo, which you really probably can't see because it's just so, well, black and white and grainy, but is your sister April. Tell us about April.
Well, she's a beautiful singer.
Would you say she's the sibling you look like the most?
No.
No?
No. We don't look a lot like each other.
How much older?
She's 6 years older than me.
Okay.
But we were very, very close. We used to do everything together. And she
was your best friend?
Yeah, she was my best friend.
Of all the 24 brothers and sisters and at least 12 that were living with you, she was the one that was closest.
Mm-hmm.
And she played what instrument?
She played the bass guitar.
She was a female bassist, so she was your idol in that way.
Yeah.
Was she a good singer?
Yes, very beautiful singer. I would say that a lot of my style of singing came from her.
And she had it tough growing up as well.
Yeah. She was like prone to accidents. It's weird. She always gets into these bad accidents, whether if it's a car accident, multiple car accidents. But she always had always something she's getting over.
A cast.
Mm-hmm.
What were some of the accidents? Some of the things were bad. Tell me a few of them.
Well, as I said, multiple car accidents. One time she was playing in the bedroom, kids climbing up. She was around 7 years. And the bed head, it was this wooden bed, had broke. So it had this sharp edge sticking up. And she was climbing up. I think she probably actually was decorating. I don't know what she was doing, but she was climbing up on the bed head. But she slipped and fell like that angle. And the stick went straight up her. And so she immediately had to go to the emergency hospital. They did multiple surgeries. And she actually spent Christmas in hospital at that time. But yeah, it was just like things like that. Breaking one time, she was coming out of the house, a bee flew in her ear and started stinging her, and with being frantic like that, she was running crazy and breaking her ankle. And so her feet was in a cast, and she had to go and get an operation with this bee out of her ears, and it was always something. Things like that. So she had a lot of, life was not easy for her. So a lot of her songs, which I did, my first album was dedicated to her. I did, majority of the album was songs that she wrote because she passed at the age of 19. She passed from leukemia, a type of cancer. So she didn't, at that time she was about to start recording her songs and stuff. So I felt like I needed to carry it on.
Carrying on her dream, her vision, even in her place.
Yeah.
Wow. That's incredible.
So Onyinye album was, I would say, probably 9 to 10 songs, and it was written by her.
Yeah. So you haven't written many songs.
No.
You have 3 albums, a greatest hits, and a new one.
Mm-hmm. And the new one is a lot of songs written by my father, my sister Madge. You see
Isaac
lot.
wrote a song.
Isaac, yeah, a lot.
Yeah. So you're the mouthpiece for other people's creativity. So your sister, she was prone to accidents. She was always in a cast. I remember you told me that she was in a full body cast or from like waist down or something.
Yeah.
My gosh, just all kinds of bad things happening. And then she ran away. What happened with that?
Well, at the age of 18, I think it was, she left home, ran away, and then she just started living a crazy life, partying a lot, and and then she started realizing that that wasn't the life to live. She had a come back to Jesus thing, and during that time she got really sick. She didn't know what it was. She just thought it was bad asthma because she always had really bad asthma as well, and she would end up being hospitalized, just thinking that she was going for a respiratory thing, and turns out she barely had any blood in her. So they kept her. She came in like around 12, and we were there in the hospital all night. And around 2 o'clock the next day, she passed. They were giving her blood because she didn't have any, and somehow the blood, her body rejected it. So, yeah. So she passed at 19.
Where were you when that happened?
I just left the hospital to go and get some lunch for everybody because, we were there all night. And while we were waiting in line, my elder sister was with me, and she just fainted. And while we were in line, getting the food, paying for the food, and then when we got back, when we saw our mom's face, we realized something's not right.
Probably the same time your sister
Same time.
fainted.
Not probably. It was the same exact time when when my sister passed, my other sister fainted. Yeah.
How devastating was this for you?
It was really, really devastating for me. I felt like my whole world just came apart. I was 15 at the time because she was about to move back home the day she passed. Yeah.
It was devastating for you. I remember you sharing when she ran away.
Mm-hmm.
She gave you a letter, said, "Don't open this."
Mm-hmm.
Give it. What'd she say? Give it to Dad.
Yeah, she was going to piano lessons, and she handed me this envelope, and she said, "Give it to her father when he came back home." So I totally forgot when he came back to give it to him. And I remember I woke up crying. I had this dream that she was going somewhere, and she just hopped into the car and left without me.
Oh no!
Because we were very close, and I can't understand why. Why would she do that? Why did she didn't tell me anything and just left? And I woke up crying, and then my friend was there, staying with us at the time, and she's like, "Oh, I think you just had a dream. Was it a bad dream? It's okay, trying to console me." And she asked me what was the dream, and I told her the dream, and she's like, "Maybe your sister's thinking about leaving. She didn't come back last night." And then it just dawned on me, oh my gosh. So I ended up giving the letter to my dad, and it was the letter that she wrote. And
how devastating was that when she left?
It was a whole lot. It was like a part of you ripped out because we used to do everything together. And
I can imagine how devastating that would be.
Yeah.
So you had that. And then you get this hope that she's coming back.
Mm-hmm.
She's feeling better. your dad finally talked some sense into her. She's run away. She's now coming back. And are you getting the house ready? Are you planning? Are you preparing? And then you find out she's at the hospital, and within a day.
Yeah, it was devastating.
It was leukemia or what?
Yeah. It was leukemia.
What would you say to somebody who's going through something like that right now?
I guess to hold fast, be more close to God.
Mm-hmm. Fast forward, you lost your father.
Mm-hmm.
How many years later was that?
I think it was about 8 years, so 7 years later.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
You were in a different place. You had gotten over, not that you ever get over losing a sibling, but you weren't in the middle of the worst storm at that moment regarding your sister. And your dad is, who's the rock of the family. He wanted everybody to call him elder. He was the pastor. He was your dad. He was the schoolmaster, the principal, should I say. He was the band leader. He was your everything. Mm-hmm. You guys had a home church. You guys traveled all over, and including outside of America on this new album of yours. You're being interviewed. What it's like coming to New York for the first time and being the bassist of the family circle. And I can hear your dad saying Love Circle in the background. He's there right next to you and making sure that you get the interview and you do the interview. He was your best friend.
Mm-hmm.
You were his favorite in certain ways. When it came to the studio, you were the one he always wanted to bring.
Yeah.
When it came to long walks or long talks, you happened to be that one that came alongside, the youngest member of the band until the younger ones eventually joined. So how was it for you when you first of all found out that he was sick?
Well, it was a shock because he was just pulling out a cushion from a chair and his arm broke right here. So we knew something was really wrong if your hand just broke from pulling out the cushion from a chair. And then when we got to the hospital, they said he had cancer, and we had this back and forth, whether he should stay in the hospital, he take him home, and he wanted to go home, which home was really far away from anything.
The jungle.
Yeah. And
how long of a drive was it from where you lived in the jungle to the nearest legitimate hospital?
About 2 hours drive.
Yeah. Not a place you need someone sick to be.
Yeah. Well, if we go Port Spain, it'd be about 2 hours, but San Fernando maybe an hour.
Mm-hmm.
So we took him home because he was fighting. No, I want to be home. So we took him home, and by the hours, his body was deteriorating. He went from walking to limping, and I mean, as I said, you could see his body hours to walking with a cane. By the next day, he went to the bathroom walking with a cane, and then he can get up. He can walk back. So he was calling for help, and we all had to carry him.
Big guy.
Yeah.
Very tall.
And
very heavy.
Yeah. And so he was paralyzed from his waist down. So we realized it was too much for us to handle. We can take care of him.
Yeah.
So we talked him into going to the hospital. So we took him to the hospital, and by that time we found out the cancer was all over his body. Mm-hmm. And the government had, when they heard that he was sick, they said, we'll pay for any treatment, and so they wanted to fly him to Miami to get treatment, and he refused. He said, "No, I know where I'm going." And
very similar to Bob Marley's story. Who knows how long he had it, right? And probably he may have even had it for years before.
Yeah, I believe he knew that he had it for at least 2 years, 2 to 3 years.
Yeah,
because we had noticed a pattern in him after, but he passed. We started to think back about it. He started eating healthier and doing a lot of juicing, and
all those things
he was doing all those things. So yeah.
So your dad, as he passed away, what was his greatest desire for his kids?
Oh, his greatest desire was for us to love God. Love God with all our heart. Truly, truly love him. And to serve him. And obey the calling that God had on our life. I know for me, it was being a missionary. Taking the gospel to the world.
And your dad was a missionary.
Yeah.
Before people were sending out support letters and doing that. I mean, he was doing it for free. There were times where you guys would go and do secular shows, and your dad would say for his charge, for his fee, what was it?
Let your conscience be a guide.
Let your conscience be a guide. And these secular people are saying, I have no conscience. I'll guide you out. And they weren't giving you anything. But how did God provide for you? I mean, there were times where you guys had so little money that if you couldn't grow it, you couldn't eat it. And you had to, thank God you had a lot of land, you had to choose between a pound of sugar and a pound of salt. Which would you choose?
The salt.
The salt, of course. Okay. And then how did God provide for you?
You know, I see God provided in so many ways. Obviously, our bigger brothers really, they worked hard, you know, planting the garden and things like that. So we'll sell crops and things like that. So that kind of brought in some income, but it was a big family. So that alone, it was not, you know, enough.
So there was no food ever left on any plate?
No, no.
Ever.
It's not like, oh, this is soggy cereal. It was not that.
No such thing. No such thing.
Otherwise, a sibling would eat it for you quickly.
Eat it.
And you'd be starving.
Yeah.
No, but sometimes we would find a car would pull up and it would be these people we don't know from a church or something. And they said, God tell them to bring this. And they bring up like big sacks of flour.
The angels sing.
Groceries and stuff. And they were just being obedient to God, telling them to bring that. And they didn't know exactly at that time we had nothing.
It was God's version of Uber Eats. He phoned it in and it got delivered, and it was always just in time. And when you were in the jungle and you got hungry, did you have a Capri Sun? Did you have a Lunchables? Did you have what did you eat?
In between meals, when my sisters were cooking, bigger sisters or mom, we would dig up yams.
Dig up yams?
Yeah. And,
listen to this, Ziza. This is what I want you to do, okay? When you're hungry playing in grandma's backyard, dig up some cassava or something.
Yeah, cassava, yams. Yams were growing wild in the bush.
And then?
And we'd
wash it off in the river.
Yeah. And,
okay.
And we'll make a fire.
Okay.
Get some stones, put stones and sticks and put
what they call a tree stone fire.
And we either boil it in a tin can.
So you take a tin can, you fill it up with some river water, wash off the yam, put it over the tree stone fire, and then go climb a tree for a few minutes and have fun, and then come back and eat
it with some salt.
Some salt, that's it.
Yeah.
There it is. We're going to have that. Okay, Ziza, is that all right with you? You want to try that?
Either that or roasted yams. I like the roasted yams too.
I have to tell Ziza about one thing that you used to eat. What was one of your favorite things to do early in the morning?
Oh, there was this vine that used to grow wild, and it had this beautiful flower in it. And we used to eat the flowers. It's beautiful. It tasted yummy.
Would you like to eat flowers, Ziza?
I eat a lot of flowers.
You eat flowers. Where do you eat flowers, baby?
Hawaii.
In Hawaii, that's right. You love hibiscus. Okay, so fast forward back from eating flowers in the jungle to you are a fashion designer now. You've always been artistic. You've always been creative. In fact, when I met you, you were painting on canvas, cutting up the canvas, folding over the edges, sewing it onto a shirt that you had hand sewn from Egyptian cotton. And you were doing, how long would it take you to make one of those men's shirts?
I can't remember.
A day, maybe?
No.
Half a day?
I'll do a few in a day.
A few in a day. So you would do that, and then you were doing fashion shows, and you were selling this, and you were clothing choirs, you were clothing church members, you were clothing your entire family. Just like a Proverbs 31 woman. Literally, you were clothing your family. And you had an opportunity at, I'm not sure what age, to go to Nevis. Tell us about that.
Oh, I think I was around 24 or something like that. There was a fashion show. Yeah, I went to do.
And you asked your father if you should go. What did he say?
He said the spirit is saying no.
The spirit is saying no.
And at that time, I said I need more details. I need more of an answer. I just can't say I need more than that. And he said I can't give you more. All I can just tell you, my spirit says no.
Okay.
But I was an adult at the time.
Yeah.
And I feel like I need to make my own decisions.
Yeah.
And so I decided to go. So it was, I should have listened to his spirit. Because it turned out to be a disaster.
In what way?
Well, the fashion show and all turned out to be a disaster. A whole long story. And then on that trip, there was this guy who followed me to Nevis, courting me. And something terrible happened there where he took my innocence, took it not with permission. And it really devastated me, turned my life upside down. And yeah. And from there, just sent me in a direction that took me away from God. Because at that time, there's so many things going on throughout my life where I fell back on my feet. God, was there for me. And from 14 to that age, I was 24, yeah. So that's like within a 10
years span.
Yeah. I was, living
purity.
Yeah. I was really, really set on purity. That was my thing. I even got in a relationship with a guy that was his thing too. So we didn't have much in common, but that.
But purity.
Yes.
I heard you once say that you even thought about becoming a nun.
Yeah.
You were so into being pure.
Yeah.
Now, nuns don't marry. They don't have children. They don't, do those things. So you were all about being pure, being holy. Be holy, for I am holy, the Lord God says. So you go to this fashion show. You're out of town. You're out of your parents' oversight. And this guy is courting. He's chasing you, essentially, relationally. And there's a time where he makes a move and you say no. And you scream no.
Yeah.
And you shout no. And how devastating was that for you? I mean, did a part of you die at that moment?
It was as though when it happened, from that time it happened, for a few minutes, I can't really give an account.
It was like you blacked out. Almost.
Yeah.
You
I just
sunk into yourself.
Yeah. All I remember him pulling me out of the ocean, water up to here.
Wait, so what happened?
I just ran out and just.
When he
I ran straight into the ocean.
When he was finally done, I will say the word, raping you.
Yeah.
You ran into the ocean and pretty much almost going to drown.
Yeah. And something in that moment, I just kind of snapped. I just felt like I was nothing. I felt like I was no good. I felt like, all these years of keeping myself pure, it just went away in vain. What was the sense in it? I just felt like, and I just I turned away from God. I just said, God, no, how can you let this happen? But in my trying to deal with it, I said, well, I might as well just stay with him, So I ended up in a relationship with him and then continuing this pattern of sinning. And it wasn't like something I was enjoying or anything. And I just felt like I was being raped over and over again, But then God wasn't done with me.
God's not done with you. Amen. So you're date raped. And then I'm sure when he rescues you from the water, he has these sweet words, I'm sorry, or on this or that, and I promise I won't, blah, blah, blah. And eventually he coaxes you in. Whatever happens, maybe you feel like maybe I can remedy this. Whatever it is. As you were explaining this to me after we met, the first thing that came to my mind was Stockholm Syndrome, where somebody has this horrible thing happen to them. And in one way or another, that person uses some sort of control over you to manipulate you and keep you in this bondage. And as you started to wake up from it, you started to uncover that it was a lot more spiritual than you thought.
Yeah.
In what ways? What were the spiritual components on his side?
Well, I found this out later that he did a bunch of witchcraft on me to keep me. He did that stuff. A lot of people in the Caribbean battle with that.
Yeah. Voodoo, witchcraft, whether it's for fame, for success, for this, for that. And in this case, a lot of times they do that with relationships as well.
Yeah.
To control, almost mind control, puppeteering.
And so there was this darkness, this glooming darkness while I was in that relationship. And I felt like I couldn't get out even though I wanted to. I had this feeling all the time. And then he was abusive, emotionally abusive and physically abusive. And here it is, I feel like I couldn't get out. And if I would say anything like that, he would threaten my life. And, he would say things like, I can never get out. And, he'd say things like that. But I remember then my dad passed during that time. Right. And I remember right after my dad passed, he said, things are going to be different now. And I didn't understand what he was saying. He's like, yeah, it would be hard to keep you. I remember him saying something like that. And I didn't understand it. But not too long after, I guess people started seeing it on me. I got skinny, super skinny. I could see something was not right. And after my dad passed, my dad's friend came up to me one day and he said, how you doing, After my dad passed, how are you doing? And I was like, I'm hanging in there. I'm doing better. I'm good. And he kept on asking me again the same question over and over.
How are you doing?
How are you doing?
How are you really doing?
And eventually I broke down and I told him what was going on and how I wasn't living for God anymore and that kind of stuff. And I felt like God didn't want me anymore after what happened to me. And I was dirty, basically. And he said, you don't understand how much God loves you and how much you are his daughter and he's hurting for you. And
Jesus wept.
And he just said, you just need to cry out to him and surrender and you see how he works. And I remember doing that. And like a month, I still was in the relationship with the guy, but as those things just started, I just started seeing things for what they are. I started feeling like a cloud was moving away.
The matrix was being revealed.
Yeah. And I started not being scared of him anymore. And one day I just broke up with him. I said, this is it. We're going different ways. And he was like a demon possessed person, screaming and cussing and saying all kinds of stuff. And threatening my life. And I remember started walking with a weapon in my waist.
You're walking with the weapon in your waist.
Just in case, because he was in another country at the time when I told him on the phone. I said, don't bother to even come. And so he showed up. So I was prepared if he's going to do anything to me. I was going to fight for my life. I wasn't going down without a fight. That's what I was thinking. And the strangest thing, he came and he said he wanted to talk to me. And he put me down to sit down. And I sat on the side of the bench, he on the other side. And he just apologized for everything.
Wow.
Admit everything, apologize, and said, you're going to have a good life. And I'm sorry for messing up your life. And
wow.
And that was it. He jumped in a taxi and took an airplane and left. And I never saw him after that. And in the Caribbean, when somebody threatens your life like that.
Yeah, they'll burn down the house with you in it.
Yeah.
They will. Yeah. Murder, suicides are very common there.
So I saw God really came through for me.
Protected you.
By me surrendering and giving it all to him and realizing that he can get me out of it. I don't have to feel trapped. When I realized that he loves me and he can make me pure again, he can wash me. And then I realized too, it wasn't by my works. I realized most of my life I lived by works. Like I have to do this to be right with God. It all goes hand in hand. I'm not saying it doesn't.
Works for the evidence of faith and grace.
My Christian walk was more based on works than truly depending on God. And in that time, in that moment, I realized I needed to totally depend on God. Nothing I did could make him love me more or make him love me less. And to me, I feel like when I truly started living for God was after that. It's when I truly,
So you had these hills and valleys, and you were just coming out of that valley. What would you give as wisdom? In fact, I just wish that this was isolated and that this was, you were an individual, that this was the only time it happened to a woman in humanity. But man, it's happened to so many people in your life.
Yeah.
So many of your friends, so many of your family members, so many people in, whether it's your country or in the other countries we visit, where when you share your story, people line up, 12, 15 people about ready to say me too for the very first time. This was long before the Me Too generation popped up. I mean, what would you say to somebody? What did you say to somebody that's very close to you just last week on the phone when this person was saying, but he loves me and he's going to counseling, or he's apologizing, but he's this, and he still beats her. He's still this, he's still that. What would you say to that person?
The same thing I did. You really got to surrender all to God. Say, God, I can't do this on my own, and I need your strength. I need your guidance. I need your Holy Spirit. I need everything to empower me from inside out. And He will, but it takes you surrendering. It takes you acknowledging that you need His strength and start stepping forward. Because it took me, once God gave me the spirit of boldness, once I surrendered, it still took an action of me breaking up, even though my life was a threat. He was threatening my life.
Would you recommend somebody, if they're breaking up with someone like that they still continue to communicate with them?
Absolutely not.
That they still have that person follow them or reach out to them on social media?
You're not. You need to cut it off clean. Make a clean break. Doesn't matter whether that person changed or not. I hope for the best for that person to change.
But
and God to change, but you shouldn't be entangled in that.
Their history is probably the best indication of what they'll do in the future. And obviously, God is a God of second chances, but it doesn't mean that you should go back.
No.
I mean, if you're in one of those relationships right now, if you're being abused, if somebody's putting their hand on you, if somebody's hitting you, you need to immediately get out of that position. You need to immediately get out of that. You could literally be dead tomorrow.
Yeah.
You need to get out without that person knowing, and you need to let somebody else know immediately.
Yes.
And I am so glad that you got out of that. And I'm so glad that pastor friend encouraged you, that God's not mad at you, but He's madly in love with you. Because the Avion that I met didn't have that dark cloud over her head.
Yeah.
Between that happening and when I met you, what transpired? How did you change? Because you were not that broken person. You were made whole by Christ.
Yeah. Well, it's no big set of words. It's basically God renewed me. He made me whole again. He made me pure again. And it's a daily walk with Him, realizing you have to depend on Him every day. A daily journey, daily walk. And I know one thing I did was not jump into another relationship.
Ooh, words of wisdom. Don't jump into another relationship. Rebound is not a good thing.
I just needed time to clear my head. Kind of just me and God I felt at peace. Just me and God. And I was just like, I could do this for the rest of my life. That's how I felt, And I went on a date here and there. I remember going to the movies with someone who was courting me, and then I would ask certain questions. I remember, well, first of all, I wrote a list of things I wanted and I didn't want in a man. After that,
the list, I love it. What kind of things did you have in that list?
Well, number one, I wanted him to be a man that truly loves God, a God family, not I'm a Christian, but truly loving God, having passion, having the same. Another thing was I wanted someone who had the same passions as I do for God. There are many things. So down to the outlook of the person, everything was, I wrote down a list. And so every time I would go out on a date, I would ask a few questions. And if they didn't answer right, I'd be like, not another date. And they would call, hey, it's like, no. It's not going to happen again. We're not going to go to the movies. And like, why? Well, this would lead to probably a future relationship,
Yep.
and you're not what I'm looking for.
You're not marriage material.
Yeah, you're not what I'm looking for. I
Did
don't
you
want to
ever-
waste your time and my time.
Did you ever share this list with friends, and what did they say?
They say I would not ever find that person.
Mm-hmm.
They laughed at me.
Mm-hmm.
They said, there's no way you'll find that person. I was like, well, then so be it. I'll be single for the rest of my life. I'm fine with that, but didn't realize that God.
But God.
But God.
And on that list, you didn't want somebody in Trinidad?
No, I eventually wrote that on my list.
Mm-hmm.
Because I don't know.
But you'd had it. You'd been burnt.
I
So
felt
you
like,
knew it was going to be somebody from outside Trinidad.
Yeah.
You wanted somebody that was in music.
Mm-hmm.
You wanted somebody that was doing music ministry, like your dad.
Yeah.
To which your friend said, "You're crazy.
Yeah.
Give it up.
Yeah.
Give
They
it
just
up."
laugh at me and said, yeah, you would not find that. I was like, okay, so be it then.
So here I am. If you heard my podcast about the toughest times of my life, you'll know that I came out of that moment where I felt like somebody had done the kung fu punch, ripped their hand through my chest, pulled my beating heart out, gave it a million paper cuts, squeezed lemon and salt on it, put it in the blender, blended it up with some BBs in it too, and then threw that on the ground, fed it to the snails, and let a marching band trample all over it. That's how I felt I was. And I had been so hurt after being in a 6-year most challenging relationship of my life, 4 years of counseling, and then to finally just have it pulled out from under me. No matter what I tried to do, it was over. I was devastated. So I understood loss as well. I understood being a victim as well, being abandoned. See, this is the thing that sucks about sin, man. Satan gets one person to hurt somebody else. And then in that hurt, that somebody else kind of gets deflated. And this is what happened with you, with this guy that raped you. I mean, Satan was cheering that day because this person who loved God was like, I might as well just die. Mm-hmm. And shrinking back from who they were called to be and who God made them to be. And I felt like I was doing that. I was like, after that, I just didn't even think I could do Christafari. So I stopped taking Christafari shows. And it wasn't because of any sin on my part. It was just because I just felt like I couldn't do it anymore. And then I got a call from a guy named Don Juan. Yes, I was introduced to my wife by a guy named Don Juan, who said, hey, Mark, he was a promoter in Trinidad. I'm like, I'm not doing any shows. He's like, hey, well, then can you do a seminar teaching artists how to be gospel artists, on the music industry? Can you do that? At that time, I had run Christafari for quite a few years. I had started my own record label, booking agency. I had done it all, right? So I'm like, I can do that. I can teach people about the industry. Yeah, that's not a problem at all. And so I go to Trinidad with my wound still festering. Now you guys are sitting up. Now you guys are like, okay, the depression is over. Now break out the tissues for the tears, the happy tears. So I go to Trinidad and I'm like, I can teach about the music industry. Okay, so I do it. I go and I start teaching, and then people start coming in late, half an hour late, 45 minutes late. This is Trinidad. I teach. I'm halfway through an 8-hour day. 4 hours in come this group of people. I'm like, who the heck comes to a seminar 4 hours late? Someone with the last name Blackman. And they all have dreads, and they're the only ones with dreads. I'm like, well, wow, what's going on with this? And then I end the seminar, and then they come up just like every other artist did. Ziza's brimming with excitement right now. And they give me this promo pack, which is like a little folder with the cover sheet and a bio. And it's describing their sound as comparing them to like Bob Marley and Sting and Erykah Badu. I'm like, nobody sounds as good as these artists. Yeah, right. Oh, there's a CD. I pop open the CD. I put it in the CD player. The volume's all the way up and I'm not hearing anything. I look at the CD and there's nothing written on it. I'm like, what the heck? Oh, there's another CD. Pull open their second CD, The Love Circle, Jammu Journey. Okay, pop that one in. Let me see. And nothing is playing. 2 blank CDs. So all I can do is read their description. And now I'm really frustrated because everybody thinks they sound like A and they really sound like Z, if you know what I mean, or vice versa. It's just, so I'm like, now I'm really curious. So I call up Don Juan and say, hey, Don Juan, I got 2 blank CDs. He's like, it's okay. I'll take care of it. I'll take you over there and you can get more. Turns out they were 4 hours late because, well, first of all, a black man doesn't start doing anything until 45 minutes after the deadline, and then they start getting ready. And then, was that 2 hours? Sorry.
Not me, though.
Not her. And then they start getting ready, and then there's only 1 shower, 1 bathroom for all of them. And then and then on the way there, Sheldon, the older brother, or one of the older brothers, was like, oh, we got to get some CDs. So they're waiting outside the plant for them to manufacture the CDs, to print the jewel case, to do all this. And then, of course, they get 2 stinking blank CDs. They pay good money for blank CDs. Thank God for blank CDs, because that's how me and my wife met. So I go over to their house. I will say, when people say, how was it when you met your wife? I always say it was love at second sight. Because the first time I saw her, well, she was sitting right next to her brother, who looks nothing like her. Very, very dark skin. And I'm like, okay, they're married. You know, she's in her mid-20s. They're surely married, and they've got a whole quiver of other people with them. Okay, you know, I wasn't even thinking anything about that. But then when I go to their house, it's on Lover's Lane. Literally Lover's Lane. The whole lane is full of bougainvillea flowers. I go into their yard and then around, and it's just immaculate how they've decorated it, created. It's just so awesome. And then I go into the back room, which they call the studio. It's got a zinc roof, one of those aluminum siding kind of things. And there's probably 3 people there. And they said, oh, you came here for music? Yeah, we saw your seminar there. That was cool. And, you know, thick Trini accent. I mean, you think she has an accent. She has no accent. Every Trini says she lost her accent. And then they grab their instruments. And better than getting a CD, I get a live performance. Now, with this whole quarantine, everybody's doing live performances in their living room. That is nothing compared to this. She's playing maybe bass or guitar, and somebody else is playing guitar, and they start singing. And as they do, they start passing around the main acoustic guitar. And whoever gets that gets to sing. And I was drawn in by her voice. I was drawn in by her beauty. I'm looking at a picture right now of Avion, just gorgeous, wearing all blue with her head covering and an outfit that she made herself. And every time that she sang, my heart just stopped. And then they would pass the guitar to somebody else, and these people were talented.
Then the moment ended.
These people were talented, but I would have to spin again and go all the way around. The guitar would have to go all the way around back to her. So I would be like, can I hear her again? Can I hear her again? And her songs were so heartfelt because she was singing April's songs, her sister's songs. She wasn't singing originals. She was singing deep, poetic, dark, but hopeful songs. And then as each song would be sung, another family member would come in. And another one, somebody would play percussion. Another harmony come in a third. Another harmony comes in fifth. Mom comes in with the higher octave. And before long, I'm surrounded by black men in the black man family and black women and percussion. It was dreamy. And then afterwards, she takes me back to right next to the studio is where she sews. She shows me her sewing machine. My mom had a sewing machine, and my mom had her own clothing company. My mom painted. She shows me her paintings. She shows me, and then she gives me one of those outfits that she spent a day on for free that everybody else has to pay $40 for. I had no idea that meant something special. But something really excited me. And I heard that the first 2 times I went to Trinidad, there were no beaches. All the good beaches are in Tobago. Don't go to beach here. They're all polluted. And then somebody told me, Don Juan, that there was a really beautiful beach on the other side of the island. So I said, I need to go to the beach. I've been here 3 times. I have to go to the beach. And I want to go with the Blackmans. Okay, I'll work it out. So I talked to her brother, and I was like, no, I want Avion to go. He's like, oh, she's not going. I want Avion to go. And then he literally, the van is full and there's no space for her. And he's like, Mark really wants you to go. She's like, I guess I'll go to the beach. And that pretty much describes us every day from here on out, because we want to go to the beach and Avion still doesn't want to go to the beach. Right, baby?
Yeah.
So she reluctantly goes because she's got other work to do. And as we're driving, her sister is very outgoing, very in your face. Nellette is like always asking the questions and poking and prodding. She reminds me so much of you, of you, Kawehena. So her sister's asking all these questions and you know, are you in a relationship? Are you this? Are you that? And I tell her all the stuff I went through, and it was just, and I thought she was making a move on me. I was like, dang, this girl's forward. Turns out the whole time she was trying to connect Avion and I. Yeah. And so then her sister convinces me to stay longer. Mm-hmm. Her sister is a great evangelist. her sister convinces me to not just stay longer, but to move in with them. Oh. So now I've moved in with the Blackmans, and Eldon was kind enough to give me his bedroom, which, imagine the smallest bedroom you've ever been in, and then put a 1/4 inch or a 1/2 inch plywood piece down the middle, and one side of the room is one person's bed. You can fit a twin size bed in there and nothing more. And the other side of the room is the other person's bed. So now I have a 1/2 inch piece of plywood sheet between me and Avion, and whoever made it made this little crack down the wall so I could put my finger through and touch her finger. My fingers could touch her fingers in between the wall. It was the safest relationship you can ever have in bed when you like somebody and you shouldn't be with them at that time. So we would talk. We went salsa dancing. That was fun. We loved to salsa dance together. But then the next night I realized that she really doesn't like to get out. She's more of a house cat. So she's like, no, you guys can go. I'm like, well, I'm staying with you because, you know. And then that night we just sat outside and laid down on the concrete and looked at the stars. And she sang a song. Sing it for me, baby.
What song?
Yellow. Sing it. Just sing the chorus. Go for it. No. Yeah. Yes.
No.
You can do it.
It's a song by Coldplay. Look it up.
Go for it. No. Just a one taste. Everybody needs to hear it.
Nobody's looking.
Look at the stars. Go for it.
Look at the stars.
Come on, sing it, baby.
Okay, Ziza will sing it.
Go for it, baby.
Look at the stars. Look how they shine for you and everything you do, because they're all yellow. I can't remember.
And my heart melted even more. And then she sits up and she starts saying, you like poetry? I'm like, yeah. And then so we go and get some poetry that she had, and she starts reading it. I'm like, who wrote this? She's like, I did. This is deep. These are all written on these little handcrafted little pieces of paper that she made. And I was like, every time she read one, I felt like it was like excavation into the soul. You can think of all the things that she went through that you've heard in these episodes. You can imagine the cries to the Lord, the psalms that she was writing. I'm like, who have you shared this with? She said,
no one.
No one. I said, nobody but your family? She said, nobody but you. And now it was like, oh, snap. This is getting really real. And then she's like, and then she gets up and walks away. I'm like, okay. And then she comes back and then she goes, I just wanted to say, I got to go get some water. And she goes to get some water. She comes back, she sits down and she takes a deep breath and she says, I just wanted to say, for a long time, I've been praying for a friend, and I've been praying for a husband, and I don't know which one you are, but I thank God for you. And that was deep. She made the first move.
No, he did.
So I was like, this is insane. Wow. And I remember the next day we went and we took a maxi taxi to go to the zoo, the most tore up zoo I've ever seen in my life, with a starving tiger, worse than what you see on the Tiger King. And it was the most magical moment, sitting next to her, our hands touching, swinging on a swing together, walking through the botanical gardens and holding hands. But I had just come out of a really rough relationship, and I felt like at that moment, it was just, oh man. I said earlier, no rebounds. I'm like, this is magical, but this is ridiculous. This is happening so fast. So I started praying to God and I started seeking, and I did what I always do when I want to know what to do. I take a piece of paper, I fold it in half, and I write on the left side cons and the right side pros. Should I stay or should I go? Ba-na-na-na-na-na-na. And one of the should I stay was, well, there were many of them, but should I go? One of them was her mother. Her mother was not a big fan of us. Her mother was definitely opposing. And sure enough, I felt like, you know what? I might as well go. I should go. I think this may be moving too fast. I mean, nothing has happened, but our hands touched too soon. And so I say, I'm going to go, and she has a piece about it. That's great. And we have one kind of date. And on the way home from the date, when we get back, her mom rips her a new one. And her mom really stood against it at that time. And it was really challenging for you, right? Mm-hmm. And then I have you make me breakfast. And it was the worst meal you ever made for me. It was bread and eggs. That's it. Nothing else. I was like, wow, this girl cannot cook.
Ziza's favorite.
Little did I know that she's the best chef in the world. She didn't want to win me over with her cooking, she said. Mm-hmm. So I go and I say goodbye to her at the airport. And I'm thinking, wow, this is one of those long distance romances that is, I just can't imagine this working. Can't imagine this working. But this is so magical. It feels so good, but it just seems, I mean, she's like 3,000 miles away. How is this going to work? I get home and there's this other girl at church. She's best friends with my best friend, and her dad's a missionary too. And we connected, and we also touched hands. We saw a movie together, and there was, now it was really confusing. Oh, what the heck? And I shouldn't be around anybody that's female right now. I'm still reeling from this breakup, from this devastating, disastrous heart rip. And I feel like God is saying, you know what? You need to find what you need in me, not in a girl. And what Avion said earlier is so true. She's like, I had everything I needed in God. And if it was me and him for the rest of my life, I'd be fine with that. So sure enough, I go and tell the girl locally, and I tell Avion through AOL instant messaging, that I'm going to take an estrogen sabbatical, an estrogen fast. I'm going to step away from any female whatsoever. And mind you, I'm the leader of a band and I'm single. That's not an easy thing to do, but I'm going to completely, it's going to be me and Jesus, and I'm going to find everything I need in him. And the one girl locally has a meltdown, literally cries and sobs so much so that my jacket was soaking wet and my towel was soaking wet. And she is fighting and kicking and screaming and, trying to make this relationship work. And it wasn't a relationship. We were friends. We went bowling. We went to a movie. That's it. And Avion, what was your response?
Well, we had scheduled an IM session because we do IM session once a week. So I came there and he wasn't there. He was online. So I waited, and then eventually I went and checked my mail, and I saw this mail from him, and he said those things what you just said. And then I thought, well, if I responded, I said, if God tell you to do this, then you should do this, and he will bless you. And I don't know if I'll ever talk to you again or ever see you again. But it was really nice knowing you, and God, go with God, be with God. And that was it. And I said goodbye and in the letter, and that was it. Weeks passed. I didn't try to reach back out to you or anything.
You didn't try once.
No.
While the other person took my jacket and my towel, got them laundered, put some perfume on them, and delivered them to the front door of the place I was staying, just hoping that perhaps they could get me back. But you said, I hope the best for you.
Yeah.
And that to me, so this is what you need to do. If you're with somebody and you're like, should I be with them or not? Just break up with them and see how they respond. And if they respond godly, that's the right one. Just kidding. I didn't mean it. It was the beginning of a soul-searching journey for me. It wouldn't be that long of a journey. because God would make it very clear very quickly that she was the one. And we'll get to that in the next episode. So next week, stick around for part 3 of my conversation with Avion and for us to give you our marital advice of how to create your list and how to find the one. Thank you for listening to the Word, Sound, and Power Hour.
Power of the Spirit is on display. Word, sound, and power.
Thank you for listening to the Word, Sound, and Power Hour. If this story encouraged you, please share it with a friend and help bring healing and hope to others. Look out for Avion's brand new album, Fly, available soon. To support us, please go to christafari.com/donate. May you seek God first and follow Him with all your heart.
I pray to God for this kind of love, the sweet, sweet, precious, and fading, happy love. You've given me my heart's desire. Praises and thanks to you, Holy Father. I want to praise you every day for taking all my